The first time my wife's best friend called me boring, I was holding a bowl of guacamole like a shield. We were at our Sunday night football thing, 6 adults, one drooling golden retriever, and a coffee table loaded with chips, when Tessa looked at me over the rim of her hard seltzer and said, as if we were discussing the weather, "You're too boring for Hannah." She smiled when she said it, like a TV host tossing to commercial. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, because that's what you do when a joke lands and you're the target standing on the bullseye. The dog thumped his tail on my foot. The guacamole tilted dangerously. Hannah touched my elbow, the small, private way she does when she wants me to know I'm not alone in a room. "Stop," she told Tessa, light as a breeze. "He's not boring. He's steady." "Steady is what you call oatmeal," Tessa replied. "He's oatmeal with glasses." I made it worse by saying, "I actually switched to contacts last year." Then I smiled like that had been funny on purpose. Here's the thing about me. I'm not a loud person. I like early mornings and grocery lists. I work in logistics for a regional food distributor, which means I have strong opinions about pallet configurations and spreadsheets that balance themselves. I could talk for an hour about why a clean garage is a love letter to your future self. When other people shout over a touchdown, I notice the way the chip bowl is getting low and quietly refill it. Hannah says that's part of why she fell for me. She came from noise, roommates in a basement apartment, a car with a muffler that hawked like a goose, and she liked how my evenings sounded, a pan sizzling, a dryer humming, two people speaking softly and meaning it. Tessa, though, has always been a walking sparkler. She works in events and brand partnerships, which seems like a job where you're paid to ring a bell and wave a flag. Her heels go click-click into a room, and the room turns its head to see where the parade is. After the guacamole night, boring turned into a running gag. If I declined a second beer because I had a Monday meeting at 8, Tessa would sing, "Boring," in a tune that reminded me of gym class whistles. If we played charades and I drew something like jazz hands and did it too literally, she'd clap my shoulder and say, "Hannah, girl, you could do better. Let me drag you to a rooftop where people are alive." Hannah would roll her eyes and lean against me. In private, she'd say, "You know she's kidding, right?" And most days I did. But jokes are like rain on wood. Keep dropping, and eventually some of it soaks in. One Friday, we all went out for karaoke after a long week. Tessa had landed some microbrew sponsorship for a local street fair, and she was riding that win like a surfboard. I can't sing, not even a little, but I promised to try, because marriage means sometimes you stand under lights you don't love. When my turn came, I picked an old Motown song with a friendly beat and half spoke the words into the mic, smiling at Hannah, who swayed from side to side in her gray sweater and sang along from our table. It wasn't good, but it was me trying. When I came back, Tessa's cheeks were flushed, and she said, loud enough for the neighboring booth to hear, "That was so adorable." Like a teacher at a middle school assembly. "Hannah, seriously, I'm going to find you a drummer or something. Just for a weekend. Shake the dust off." I felt my face warm in a way that wasn't from the bar lights. I pictured myself as a cardigan on a hanger. Hannah reached for my hand, and Tessa noticed, and for a second, something softer passed over her expression. Then the DJ shouted a name, and the room lurched back into noise. On the drive home, the city throwing orange shapes across the windshield, I said, "Am I boring?" It came out a little more brittle than I meant. Hannah tucked her legs under herself like she always does and stared through the glass. "You are the least boring person I know," she said, careful and firm. "You care about things other people ignore. You listen. You show up." She smiled at me. "And you make perfect omelets." I laughed, even though my chest still felt tight. "That's an oddly specific defense." "Specific is stronger," she said, and then she traced a circle on my palm. "Tessa's messy sometimes. She runs a little hot. She thinks she's protecting me. I'll tell her to dial it down." She did tell her. Tessa apologized a week later, brandishing a bakery box like a peace treaty. We all ate eclairs and watched a home makeover show, and for a while, the joke died. We went to the farmer's market. We had a picnic the first warm Saturday in April. I organized the garage and labeled the bins, and when I showed Hannah the finished rows, she hugged me like I'd built us a ship. Then spring turned to summer, and summer to fall. At work, my boss retired unexpectedly, and I stepped into a team lead role. It was less about authority and more about shepherding. New interns, new contracts, New fires to put out when a truck broke down 200 miles from where someone expected it. I liked it. It felt like what I'm good at, making pieces meet each other the way they're supposed to. We were hiring for a community partnerships coordinator, someone who knew how to talk to people at food banks and schools and local events, who could turn our crates and schedules into faces and stories. HR sent me a stack of applications on a Wednesday afternoon. The office smelled like coffee that had been hot at 9 and tragic at 2. Outside, rain stitched the parking lot together. I clicked open the first resume, then the second, then the third. When I opened the fourth, my heartbeat did a strange little skip. Tessa Green. Events and brand partnerships. A year after the guacamole, there was her name, cool as a cucumber, on my screen. And the interview request button sat there, small and neat, like a doorbell I could press or ignore. I didn't tell Hannah right away. Maybe that makes me petty, or maybe it makes me human. All I knew was that when I saw Tessa's name at the top of that resume, the memory of her laughing, oatmeal with glasses, flared in the back of my skull. But I couldn't just skip it. HR scheduled her interview like she was any other candidate, slotted neatly into my Thursday morning. No one there knew the history, and why should they? To them, she was just another applicant with event experience. The morning of, I ironed my shirt a little crisper than usual and took my time with coffee. Hannah noticed. "You're in a mood," she said, watching me line up my tie in the mirror. "Big day," I answered. Not a lie, just not the whole truth. When Tessa walked into the conference room, it was like déjà vu collided with irony. She wore one of those blazers that announce themselves before the person does, bright coral with gold buttons, and heels that tapped across the tile like punctuation marks. For a split second, her confidence faltered when she realized I was the one across the table. "Hi, she began, but the word stuttered. "Oh, wow. Hi. Good morning, Tessa," I said evenly. "Please have a seat." She sat, a little too quickly, the sparkle in her voice catching like a zipper. "I didn't realize you'd be leading this." "I am the team lead for this department," I said. My tone was professional, almost kind. "Almost. Let's go through your resume." As she talked about her event planning experience, her voice tried to regain altitude, but I could hear the wobble. She had numbers, buzzwords, partnerships with local breweries and lifestyle brands. On paper, she was qualified. In person, though, I kept catching flickers of the same woman who once laughed at my Motown karaoke like it was a middle school assembly. "Tell me," I asked after a while, "about a time you had to work with someone whose style was different from yours." Her eyes flickered. She swallowed. For half a second, I thought she might bolt. Then she said, "I guess I've had moments where I underestimated people, and I've learned not to." A strange stillness settled between us. She knew I knew. The interview wrapped up, and I shook her hand. Professional grip, professional smile. Nothing more. That night, I told Hannah. We were cleaning up dinner dishes when I said, "Guess who interviewed with us today?" She looked up, brow furrowing. "Who?" "Tessa." The plate nearly slipped from her hands. "You're kidding." I shook my head. She applied for the partnerships role. Hannah dried her hands slowly, the way she does when she's buying herself time to think. "So, how was that?" I thought of the coral blazer, the shaky laugh, the way her voice thinned when I asked about working with different styles. "It was interesting." Hannah leaned against the counter, her expression caught between amusement and discomfort. "You didn't." I was professional, I cut in. I didn't bring up the past. But she knew. For the rest of the night, Hannah seemed quieter, thoughtful. I couldn't tell if she was worried about what Tessa might say to her later, or if she was replaying old memories of the boring jokes the way I had. The next morning, HR asked for my feedback. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Technically, Tessa was qualified. But qualified doesn't always mean right. I typed carefully. Candidate has strong event background, but may struggle in a team environment that values steady, detail-oriented execution over showmanship. Recommend with caution. I hit send, and for the first time in a year, I didn't feel like oatmeal. I felt like someone who finally got to choose the flavor. I didn't expect to hear from Tessa again, but a week later she texted Hannah. I only knew because Hannah showed me, standing in the kitchen with her phone lit up like a warning flare. "Tessa, hey, can we talk? I think I messed up in the interview. I just want to clear the air." Hannah frowned, thumb hovering over the screen. "Do you want me to reply?" I shook my head. "Not if you don't want to." She sighed and set the phone down. She always thinks she can charm her way out of things. The job ended up going to another candidate, someone steady, reliable, the kind of person who double-checks pallet numbers at 2 a.m. if needed. Exactly the kind of boring that keeps the machine running. 2 weeks later, I bumped into Tessa at the grocery store. No coral blazer this time, just leggings and a hoodie, a cart half filled with frozen meals. She saw me first, and for a second, I thought she might duck into another aisle. Instead, she walked over, forcing a smile. "Hey," she said, a little too brightly. "So, guess I didn't get the job." I kept my voice calm. "HR makes the final decision." She nodded, chewing on her lip. Then, softer. "You were fairer than I deserved." For once, there was no sparkle, no performance. Just a tired woman in aisle 7, realizing the stage lights weren't on her anymore. "People change," I said, adjusting the basket in my hand. "Sometimes it just takes longer for others to notice." Her eyes searched mine, maybe for bitterness, maybe for mercy. But I had neither. I only had the quiet certainty that my life didn't revolve around her opinion anymore. "Take care, Tessa," I said, and pushed my cart past hers. That night, when I told Hannah, she wrapped her arms around me and whispered, "You handled that perfectly." I don't know if perfect is the word, but as I stood in my kitchen, steady as ever, I realized something. Boring doesn't break under pressure. Boring shows up. Boring remembers the details. Boring lasts. And maybe, just maybe, boring wins in the end.